So your goal when you came up with the design wasn't to start a bike company, you said?
Yeah, I didn't want to start a company. I mean, they're a lot of work. It's 80-hour weeks and a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, and, a lot of setup babysitting. And, it's a lot better to do suspension licensing. It's what I'm good at. I'm, honestly, running a company or playing office monkey, I can do it, but I suck. I do my best, but...
What changed your mind then?
It was too good. I mean, I honestly thought, like, if I don't build these, people won't believe me that it does what it does. And, I was like, well, the risk is I'll have to do some closeouts to get my money back, and then people will have what I've been writing. And they deserve to have what I'm writing. It's that good. So after I split from Canfield Brothers, I worked on this new suspension, put it into patent pending in June of 2020. And then the next year I got prototypes of it to test. It's pretty slick. You can kind of see that, like, on this one. So it wants to have that little pulled up. And I was like, that's not the coolest. So I'm gonna do the cable routing up here and down through here and underneath on the production.
So this is your first riding prototype?
No, this is like 3rd gen.
Okay.
It was a very complicated thing to do 3 bikes in one. I mean, it's any change that we did, we had to change and check with 2 other bikes. All the clearances, 3 bikes. So, just to be able to pull all that off, it's like, oh man, that's a lot of stuff.
Where were some things that may have caught you off guard with that?
The cable routing was the biggest one. Like, this is a prototype with cable routing through the chainstay and on the down tube. And when you change holes, you have to, like, pull your cables through, which is not the easiest. So this is 190. So that's dropped from 190 to 160. So there's some other tricks on this thing. Like this pulley wheel, because the lower hole, your chainring is in front of your bolt. So I'll slide my cog out, and there's a little keyway back here. So you can play like, hi, I have a little tool.
That's awesome.
A little Pac-Man tool. So you can, like, hold it when it's behind the chainring and tighten your bolt up.
Dude, no way.
Yeah. I mean, this is why, though, my company will survive.
Why?
I just don't have overhead. I'm solo in my basement. Like, my engineer works out of his house. I work out of my house. So.
It's not the money from being a world champ?
Oh yeah, I got all the big money from winning Masters. I did get a free fork and a bunch of rear shocks from Olin's, and a lot of stuff from Shimano, and two years of Maxxis. That was pretty sweet.
2 years? Like, that was part of the deal? If you won, you got 2 years of tires?
No, they just gave me like 20 tires a season for 2 years. It was great. It's been a long time since I had free tires. It's nice to have free tires. About half the production runs out. So people are just getting their...
50?
Mm-hmm. So people are just getting their bikes in the last little bit. So this little guy, if you're in the middle of an enduro race and you're like, I've got time to do all that, it'll just store over here.
Because in the low hole, you don't need it.
You don't need it. So what are you gonna do with it? Just put it over there. Like a CBF rearward arc upper hole, a CBF lower hole, a mid hole that gives you like all the type of riding that you want to do. And it gives people the chance to have a downhill bike when they wouldn't have a downhill bike. It gives people that are downhill racers every single track that you race, you have the perfect bike for that track in one bike. You ever seen these zip tie cutters? Like razor blade sharp?
Glorious.
Yeah.
It's the little things.
Oh, I bring these back from Taiwan. I didn't know we had these for electricians here. It's my favorite tool. Yeah, and I just dropped it from the 220 to the 190 mode. And you just put it on the lower, 3 position. And it just, it's that quick. There's a little pin back there to hold it. So then you're in 190. So after I got a prototype of it, it was like, this does what I thought it was going to do. I was like, am I really going to be able to switch 3 different travels with the same shock, have it work, and not be like out of the range of functioning? And it's kind of one of those like, really? Is that possible? Is that really going to be able to be done? Most people just assume that like there's a compromise between the holes. Like if you're designing one to be optimized, the other 2 are going to be crap. And I get that. That's a fair like guess. I would probably be the same skeptical about someone doing this. But the way the compression rates like change through the holes, how they drop in leverage, it's pretty close with a compression switch to run one spring. It's close enough that like a spring dex will get you there.
You just told me a minute ago that you ran the same spring for what?
A year and a half. I was like, what would happen if I just run my upper hole a little soft, my lower hole a little stiff? And it works. Like you want your upper hole to be a little soft to take advantage of the rearward arc blow off. You want your middle hole like perfect on your spring weight. So when you go to the lower hole, it might be a little stiff, but it has a little regression bump to help you get into sag and overcome that stiffer spring. And it's flatter line linear. So when you downhill and go up to speed, it opens right up and tracks and feels normal. And technically you can get away with just one spring if you are lazy about it. And it's close enough. I mean, we just saw me sitting on the spring I had on the blue bike in there, and I didn't change the spring. It was sagging just right. It's really not bad. And like, the truth is CBF is the best pedaling thing I've ever been on. It basically puts your chain and your rotation of the wheel path in the same spot. So both the chain is rotating right there and the suspension's rotating right there. And it's pointing at the instant center the whole time, allowing like the perfect power transfer. And the upper hole and the lower hole are tuned with it. And the middle hole has iTrack, which gives you a mechanical tug down to like help isolate the suspension movement. It's got 3 suspension patents on it. Well, one's pending, but should be soon enough. Some tracks they need like a smooth bike park, trail bike, like a bike that will pump and pedal really well on a smooth light track. There's tons of air DH type tracks that, a lot of people would put their enduro bike with a downhill fork on. And then there's a bunch of tracks that are kind of full rock garden, Mount St. Anne. So those tracks, you're like, dude, like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just have, a low pivot bike or a high pivot bike all year? So it gives you the ability to like fine tune for the specific track you're on, which is really nice because, I mean, not all tracks need a rearward arc bike and vice versa. And I'm like, this is quite the little slaying machine, because all 3 holes are really money. Like, I'd put them up against the bikes in that genre. They're that good. People are like in the comments, there's going to be compromises. So the compromises that I found are, if you run one spring, you gotta like either accept that you run a little bit soft or a little bit stiff and use the compression switches. Rebound is no problem. It's about 1 turn per hole going up is all. And with a spring dex, you can easily get 2 holes in one spring, because it's about that much of a difference. 25 pounds, 50 pounds, depending on, how you like your bike. So I can have this one set up, upper hole and mid hole, and then just on the fly twist. And I can do that at the bike park at the top of the chairlift. Go, dude, we're gonna do the jump trails. And I just want a bike that has a vertical wheel path that just carves, but has 0 chain stretch. And then is more like happy. It's only 190 travel. And then if we're going to the bumpy tracks, I can just switch it back. And then, just twist my collar. And I'm in 440 to 400 on this spring, just that quick. And a lot of times I'll have either an extra spring or a whole extra shock with my low hole on it. So I can just swap the shock instead of doing a spring swap. The cool thing about these guys is underneath well, it's not this one, it's the old one. A more new one. Right underneath, down in there, is the bolts for the shims. So this shock, when you buy it, comes with 3 shims. They're 2.5 a piece with the bolts, and you either put 1, 2, or 3 on underneath your bumper, and it reduces travel by that much. So it's a 75, 62.5, 70, and then 67.5. Did I say that right? 72.5, 70, that's the one. 67.5. So the Enduro shock does the same thing. They just, you can just put exactly the stroke you want. And every shim drops the travel 5 mil per hole. So this can be 105 or 205 to 220, 175 to 190, and 150 to 165.
Because of the shims and the shock.
Yeah. Huh. And you just go, okay, I need a bike that, is about this travel, so it pumps about this much. And, so a lot of times I won't run 220 upper hole. That's just a lot of travel. So I'll run 205 a lot. And then these guys I run almost always full. Unless I'm enduroing and I want to do like a 150 and a 175 with a 170 fork. Because like this bike, this will fit a 180 dropper in the large. It's close enough to where I need it. And it's obviously not the tie bike that has the dropper, a longer dropper post insertion, but it does the job. So you can just go from mixed wheel to 29 just by flipping it upside down. Actually, you can do it pretty quick too. It just loosens and turns and tightens back up, right? So you can run either wheel size. It maintains the geo. It's the same geo between the two. You do get about 3 mils more travel out of every hole with the mixed wheel, and 1 to 1.5 more progression rate per hole. I'm a picky guy when it comes to my bikes. I cannot ride bad riding bikes. Honestly, this isn't this steel, but it's not like over heavy steel. I didn't build a 13-pound bike. I'm still like a pound to a pound and a half lighter than Trek Sessions aluminum. I'm more than that on my brother's Jedi in aluminum. So this isn't like a heavy setup. Well, this is the bike I want to ride. I'm this selfish guy that just builds exactly what I want. And if you guys like it, then you can buy it. But still is not heavy compared to what we have these days, unless you're buying like one of the really lightweight carbon manufacturers, like the Pivot Yeti types. Like this frame is 10 pounds without shock. This bike will build up to 40.5. Even in enduro, it's 38.8-ish with, a full enduro kit, double downs, no carbon anywhere. But still has that really smooth, like, up and down vertical compliance. It has that little vibration chatter dampening.
Where's your shirt?
Here's my shirt. So it's damp. It feels like calm, and when you hit like really big hits, it has that like softness to it. So it feels better than anything else, and it has that nice little ting to it. You never know that if your aluminum or carbon bike's gonna shear off the head tube at any given moment. And this stuff, like, it will, if it ever does go, it'll do like an opening tear and then slowly open and open. You'll see it for a week or two before it'll actually go. But these things just don't go. That's why they build springs out of it. I mean, it can just cycle and cycle and cycle and never break. And that's the same thing with these tubes. They just cycle and cycle and cycle, because your frame will actually do a lot of flexing when you're riding. I mean, even an aluminum frame, we've seen it flex 19 millimeters up and down. That's a lot. Watching him in the test machines, you see him actually move that much, you're like, holy crap. But still, it's meant to do that. It has that elongation happiness to it, and it just runs forever and ever and ever, and it's not really all that much heavier anymore. I mean, bikes right now in carbon are still being built at 38 pounds. So why not have a frame that like has the best ride feel, that like takes all that vibration out of your hands and all the impacts out of your upper body? And then of course the back end is 7005 aluminum, link as well, because I wanted a stiff and light and easy to machine, cheaply to machine material. This in steel would be dumb and heavy and kind of flexy. You can build a box section that's kind of stiff, but you know, it'd be heavy and expensive to do it. I mean, even the 3D printing would be kind of expensive to do. So it's better material for back here. And I wouldn't mind doing a carbon rear, but the problem is with carbon is you poke it and it shatters, it breaks. No matter what you do, a couple of impacts, and let's face it, when you crash on a bike, what hits the ground is here. Like, you don't hit here because you have a handlebar. It's rare you hit your top tube and down tube on the rocks and stuff, but you hit this section all the time. So it's nice to have a durable material back here that will hold up and last. And then I've got 17 mil bearings everywhere that are big and tough. This side has a double stack where it takes the most load from pedaling. It just needed it to get the pulley wheel to the right spot. So it's just like, let's just double it up. So, you know, big old gigantic pivot bearings. And, you know, my pivot screws are really thick. So that, like, you know, when you're riding my bike, you know the thing's not ever gonna go. I mean, look at this thickness on these things. You know, big coarse threads. We have a little like shoulder that presses into the frame, the last little bit. That section will go in like 1.5 mils. So it'll be a shoulder on shoulder press plus a little like overlap, so you don't have a thin spot that'll go. It's the kind of bike you don't need torque specs, because you just torque it down as hard as you can. Like if you're bending your Allen, it's too much.
So you don't have torque specs on it? You just yard on it.
It's like the old Canfield days. Like, you just give her the beans and it will stop. Like, I don't need, like, it's not a pinch clamp like here or here where you need like a certain pressure. Like, you don't want to overload it. These ones, there's no overloading. Like, you know, if you stand on your Allen and start flexing your Allen, you're done. Like, and because of that shoulder press, these things hold up pretty tough and tight. They don't like to loosen on you, because that last little, like, pressing the shoulder in, like, keeps everything tight, like a natural Loctite. Yeah, we did it at Canfield. This is one of my brother's smartest things we've ever done. It just lasts a long time.
Ray Charles.
Geez, Ray, interrupting vital. It's an old Canfield rider from Tahoe.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's the goal, is to have, like, I mean, that's kind of half the reason I like the Vampire name, was it's an immortal thing. Like, we have a disposable product, and you guys can gripe at me all you want about my 2-year warranty, but the truth is you don't need a lifetime warranty when you have quality stuff. Real lifetime warranties are, that's a manufactural defect. Well, you're not going to have a manufactural defect after 2 years. You're going to find that in the first 2 years. And then after that, I just take care of you. If you have a problem, like, and I have an extra rear end, I'm going to send it to you. But that's the deal. I make them so tough, you're not going to have those issues, you know? And I'm a writer, so you call me with a problem, I'm just going to be like, dude, If it's cost, here you go. If it's something I have, I'll give it to you. But I'm not going to give you a lifetime warranty for all the ding-dongs that love to like be sponsored by warranty and take their bike off the roof to flat, or go like case a bunch of doubles enough to get something to tear after they're sick of their bike being dented. Oh, it's got a bunch of scrapes on it. Let me see if I can get a free warranty. No, dude, that's just not how I run. But I've learned a long time that like you don't need a long warranty if you just build proper bikes. Like, check out this hanger. So this is the UDH hanger that is non-SRAM. So notice that I didn't do a whole bunch of plastic around a little thin piece of metal in the middle, because I didn't want to buy the SRAM one. It was like, that looked like it was going to break. Why do they give us these little like plastic molded things with a little piece of metal in it? So I did my own CNC ones. Like, these ones won't go. You can always just buy a UDH hanger, like if it ever does go, as your backup. But again, you're not going to need it. But that's the goal, is like, yeah, if you wanted to, you could ride this bike till you're dead. I mean, it should last you that long. But again, you know, everything has its life cycle. If you go to a bike park like every day for 8 hours in a summer, you can probably get any frame to fatigue out.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, you do enough big bender hucks, it's gonna fatigue out and go. So, you know, but in general, like, you know, that's why it took me so long to come to market. I was testing this bike for like 4 seasons. Well, 3 seasons. 1, 2, 3, and no, 4. 2021 until, you know, last year. So, but I was like, you know, real road riding. I sent a bike to a guy 2 summers ago. He's 220. He has 23 Canfields, and he rides tough. He's the Avalanche guy. And I was like, dude, go be dumb and overshoot jumps and land sideways a whole bunch, because I'm only, you know, 190 to 200, and I ride kind of smooth, and I don't miss jump landings very often. And I was like, dude, just give me that really big dude, like extra smash test. And truthfully, we added a support gusset on the upper pivot and the side plate gusset because of him. He was able to stress it enough to at least get the paint to crack from flexing to warrant adding those 2 gussets.
Okay.
But other than that, like my proto that's down there, it doesn't have them. And I rode that thing the whole time. That was Gen 1. Didn't have any plates, didn't have anything, and I'm that heavy and it lasts that long. So I was like, well, a little bit of gusseting and we're gonna be most likely lifetime bikes. Be just enough to like get, you know, that big dude to be able to ride his bike tough too. The titanium one is 8 and this one's 10 without shock. So they're building up all right. I mean, it'll be what, 40 and a half. My titanium is sitting at 36 with double downs and full 29. So it's not bad. No. How is that? How am I in the right sag spot with a spring that was meant for 160 and I'm in 140? Well, it's because this compression rate has like a regression into the sag zone. So it helps push that heavier spring into your sag, giving you a little bit of that top end softness that you shouldn't normally have at that travel with that size of a shock. And then it's only 15% down there. So it's really flatline linear-ish in that lower hole, which allows it to push through that heavier shock or heavier spring. And it all lined up just like I thought. And it is the most impressive hole that I have. That lower one with CBF tune and that like gigantic shock for a little bit of travel. It's just like super low leverage. It's like 2.2 down to 1.9, 1.95. Super low, but you get all your travel. It opens right up when you downhill. Like right on up. It doesn't feel out of the range. I didn't change the spring. I mean, I twisted it down to the middle hole spot, but it's right there. It's ready to go. Like technically, if you get a spring dex, you can run with a little bit of twist pretty consistently through all holes. It's not bad. I think it's just a matter of getting people like comfortable enough to change their travel, change their wheel path, and be okay with dealing with the shock changes that you do. You know,
people that would be interested in this bike are kind of going to have a grasp of all that anyway?
Well, most of the customers that bought Canfield Brothers were usually dudes that were like, and competent enough to build their own bike, because we only sell frame onlys, which I'm only doing now. And yeah, I mean, if you're an off-the-shelf dude that goes to the shop every day, you probably aren't going to be buying this. You're going to be buying a complete out of the shop. So, and that's okay. I don't need to make $1 million and, build thousands and thousands of bikes. I'll probably only build 200 a year. This is only the first batch and it was only 100. So yeah, it's not that complicated. You can just switch a hole, turn one turn of rebound up or to the right, every hole you go up, to the left, every hole you go down. If it's a little soft, turn down your little compression switch. If it's a little stiff, turn it off. That's about it. And, if you want to do a spring change, do a spring change. Every hole 50 pounds or 25 pounds, depending on how you feel. You get a spring deck, turn the little collar. It's not really that hard. And this frame's $4,000. The steel frame's $3,000 without shock. I mean, they're not that bad. They're not that out of the range. And you get 3 bikes in one. You really do. Like the steel bike, you can race enduro on if you need to. This one will give you a downhill bike, an enduro race bike, and hell, a trail bike. I mean, it really puts the whole quiver in your hands. This is the frame number 2 of Canfield Brothers, the big fatty fat.
Give me the specs.
This is 12 inches in the front, 12 in the back, or 300 in you metric guys. This has about 4 inches of rearward, so it feels probably deeper than anything because rearward adds a lot of travel feel because it moves out of the way of the object. So it feels probably in the 14, 15 range with that much rearward. Yeah. So this was, my brother got the first one that was red, and this one was mine. We never went to production because it had major, issues with 4-to-1 leverage, and it didn't have a pulley wheel on it at first. I added all this afterwards and propertized it because, the instant center came off of where that chain line is now, not where we ran it with no pulley wheel. We couldn't bottom out the bike in the upper 4 cogs without a pulley wheel, or we'd blow the derailleur off. So you'd have to shift down to do a drop. Like pedal at it, shift down, and then you could do the drop.
Has this ridden off the mushroom drop?
Oh yeah. We used to race these for years, especially in the Moab chairlift days.
Oh yeah.
They were sweet.
The rim trail.
Yeah. This was the first bike. We thought it would just, there was 8-inch bikes out at the time, but my brother's thought was, well, it's just going to go to moto where they're 12. And then when we got this, we're like, we definitely overshot. Let's trim down to 10. That's where the fatty fat came from, because it was not as big. And then we went to the Formula 1, which dropped it down to 9. And that was a pretty good spot in the 26-inch days. But this thing was fun to ride. Still fun to ride. If you can keep the rear shock from blowing. Yeah, my top tube sticker, my Taiwan friend, I let him take a test ride. He crashed it. Smashed up my stickers. I was like, dude.
Is the down tube like monocoque kind of? Like what's...
Dude, that was a really thick square tube that we had the top, bottom, and sides machined halfway through to lighten them up.
Are you serious?
No joke. There's a pocket below the pivot and above the pivot. This one has the bottom. My brother's doesn't have the bottom hogged out. And it's tough enough that all these years, even with a 12-inch fork, it's held. I mean, it was thick. I mean, it's really a thick tube. And we don't have the patch underneath. Knowing what I know now, it should. This all had pretty thick tubing on it, though.
What do you think the weight is?
Oh, 55 to 60. Most of that's that fork. That fork is really heavy. That frame's probably 16.
So I have this theory about the high level pro, that they have this extra advantage that we're never gonna see off of like a mid-level pro. And it's all based on the fact that they are training and practicing on brand new fresh rubber all the time. And you normally don't get that super sharp, fresh knob feel. You only get it on your race run, because that's the only time you dare put $200 worth of rubber on your bike, and then you're gonna run that rubber as long as you can until the next race. And so unless you're a Loic that gets as many tires as he wants, so every day he's on brand new, sharp rubber, practicing with the best grip, getting tuned to the brand new tire super grip, like, unless you're like, you know, spending loads of money on tires to get that kind of cornering traction, like confidence, like the high level pro, I swear that's the real advantage of being like that top echelon dude.
Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always just like, man, do I dare? I mean, it's one of those like, dude.
What, put new tires on?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, it's race run, and even then I'll usually do front to back and a fresh front. And that's kind of the normal like go-to. It's like, okay, I'll get a fresh front, because that's super important, I never blow. And the back, you know, it's usually just a little bit of side knob wear. Your front braking knobs aren't really, you know, getting worn. And so your back braking knobs are usually pretty fresh, and it's okay if this one slides a little bit. You know, and then that's the most affordable way to run it, is the swap front to back and then a fresh front.